dedicated to the transforming of human consciousness on planet Earth in our lifetime. So trust, know, be, and do the process as we unzip reality. Good days, all. Welcome to Unzipping Reality. I'm Leah LaChapelle, your host. Us love us. It's a big planet to take on. It's a big planet to be us with. And that is exactly what we are. Whether you care to acknowledge that or not, that is how we fly here on Unzipping Reality. This is our home. This is our birthright. This is our inheritance, is planet Earth. Call her what you will. This is our home. And so we've been doing a fair amount of unzipping of this kind of reality in terms of what is possible. Who are we really? Why are we here? What's going on? And can I have any fun doing a podcast, internet radio show on Metaphysical Talk Radio and have fascinating guests and talk about all of these various subjects? Well, the answer for me is yes. That's why I get up in the morning, is to be alive. That is a huge assignment, is to be alive in body at this time, ushering in the new paradigm. So that much of reality is sufficiently unzipped. That portal is open. I'd say it's wide open. So I'm inviting us to step on through and be who and what we really are. Now, I mentioned aliveness. My guest today is a thrill for me because he is very, very alive, as you're going to hear on this interview. His name is Kelvin Chin, and he is the author of the best-selling book, Overcoming the Fear of Death through each of the four main belief systems. So we're going to be talking about overcoming the fear of death. Do I have anyone's attention? Kelvin is very well suited for this conversation because he has founded a nonprofit to dedicate his efforts to helping people improve their quality of life through an approach that is based on understanding, that little thing called death, much more clearly, and aligning that understanding more accurately with each of our respective belief systems. Now, isn't that respectful? We get to keep our own belief systems. I'm liking it so far. So each person that has this kind of interface with the truth that Kelvin Chin brings reduces or eliminates their fear of death. I don't want to wait any longer. I want to bring Kelvin up because the rest of his credentials are way too long. He's got degrees everywhere. He serves all over this planet in many different respects, over many different countries, in very many ways. So we'll get into that, but I just don't want to wait any longer. Thank you for your aliveness, Kelvin Chin. Welcome to Unzipping Reality.
Thank you very much for having me, Leah. Really appreciate it.
Well, I would like to say, I want to acknowledge you because you are very accessible on the internet, sir. I mean, you are so easy to find.
That's great.
You're everywhere. You have every kind of genre there is. And you have all kinds of websites and ways of tracking with you. And so I just really would like to congratulate you because it's easy to find you to have this conversation.
Well, I appreciate that because it's always good to get feedback because that's absolutely my intention. I want to make myself as accessible as possible. I mean, people can even make appointments on my website with me. My calendar is right there. So I want to make it as easy as possible for people to reach me, as you say.
Yeah, well, you have done it in spades. And your website is overcomingthefearofdeath. Is that a .com?
Yeah. .org. It's org.
.org. Oh,
because
excuse me.
Non-profit. Because it's a nonprofit. So
Yes,
.org.
yes. Okay, overcomingthefearofdeath.org. So everybody needs to really check that out. Okay, so I know everyone listening, and I want to thank our listening audience because that's why we do this. It's a expanded conversation in their listening. Kelvin, what on earth caused you to go in to the depths of this thing that we call death and expounding on it with other people? What is it? What happened with you?
Right. So the watershed moment for me was my mom dying young. She was young. I was young. She was in her 50s, and I was 30 at the time, I think. And it was really a shock. She had an illness, and it went very quickly, and she was gone physically off the planet, like in a matter of very short months. And it was a shock to me. I was very close with my mom, and that was my first. I mean, I had other deaths in my family. My grandparents, actually, my grandmother, she predeceased her mother. So, but my grandfather, I had other relatives, uncles, aunts, family members. But my mom and I were tight. We were really close. And so that was the one that really shook me. And so that's how I started thinking about this more, really more seriously, as opposed to just going to a funeral, paying my respects, which we all do, which is a good thing. It's an important thing to do. But it just didn't touch me personally as much as this death did of my mom.
And so you started asking questions. What were some of your questions that you were asking? Are they reasonable questions just like all of us have, or were they kind of weird? What's going on there?
Yeah, I just, first of all, I think before I even got to the point of asking questions, and I know everybody and all your listeners have been through various stages of this, is you're in this overwhelming sadness mode. You're not even... Yeah. You might be asking questions, but they're not really like rational questions.
No.
Or you're just overwhelmed by the emotion of the loss. And so I'm no different from anybody else. I went through that, and then in retrospect, I can talk about this. Of course, when I was in it, it was terrible. It was a horrific emotional experience, and it was very difficult for me. I was in my last year of law school at the time, and that was tough enough alone. And then my mom dies, and in the middle of that, and so I was in a psycho-emotional wreck, really, to be candid. And at the same time, I think I was in a state of denial about it, like many of us get, because we soldier through it, so to speak. We just kind of like, I got to push through it. And I didn't realize till in retrospect how psycho-emotionally I was affected by my mom's death. And what happened was, how you walk around, you talk to people, and they say, so, Leah, how you doing? And or Leah, you ask me, how you doing, Kel? And I
fine.
Said, I'm doing fine. Exactly. Okay, fine. Whether we're doing fine or not, we say fine for various reasons. We don't want to get into it, or we're in a hurry to get someplace, or whatever, or we don't know the person that well. Who knows what, But I mentioned once, one of my law school buddies asked me, so how you doing today, Kel? I said, I'm doing okay. My mom just passed away. You kind of say it like matter of factly, like, really, your mom? And he goes, really? And he just started talking to me about a death that he had experienced in his family, his grandfather. And then another person said, oh, my brother was in a motorcycle accident. It was terrible. And so people start disclosing things to you when you share a little bit of your private life to them that you feel safe enough, and then they feel safer to share a little bit more of theirs with you. And that's how it started. And then I started having conversations like this, not because I was professionally interested in doing so. It was just because it was a need that I had, and I saw that it was helping them and me both sides.
I see. Yeah, you didn't really realize you had asked for this, I suppose, because you had a law degree. I mean, your credentials are extensive. You've graduated from Dartmouth, Yale Graduate School, and Boston College Law School. I mean, you've held senior business executive roles at a global level. I mean, my goodness, that's a far cry from what you have allowed yourself to become. And I just want to thank you, because I think that people need what you're offering today, maybe even more than they might need a fancy attorney.
Yeah, no, there's plenty of fancy attorneys out there, that's for sure. I've worked with thousands of them out of the millions that exist. I've worked with thousands of them personally. And yeah, there's plenty of really bright, great attorneys out there. But, you know, what I'm doing, I'm taking a different approach to it, as you indicated earlier, too. I'm trying to help people understand in a non-religious way or in a non-cultural way. So I'm trying to take off the table the potential for people getting into disputes about who's right and who's wrong about their belief system as it relates to death and dying. Because when I started having conversations with people, this was back in the 80s, I started having conversations with the people. I'd see if there were more than two of us together, if there were 3 or 4 people in the conversation, you start to see that some people start to feel, you could see either explicitly in their language or non-verbally in their body language, you see them start getting uncomfortable with some of the people's perspectives about death and dying. And I thought, is there a way that we can talk more about this really important, I would argue, the most intimate moment of our lives is the moment we physically die. Can we talk more about this? Can we talk more about this more openly? So that's when I came up, you know, I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he and I were brainstorming this, and it came up with these 4 belief systems that I talk about in my book. So that's the genesis of that.
Lovely. Well, I suppose we should crack open those 4 belief systems. I'm sure that you have it straight, so let's hear it.
Yeah.
What are they?
So I came up with, basically, I thought about it. So what are the belief systems that potentially underlie and support all the religious and cultural beliefs that exist in the world, instead of getting stuck in those specific religious and cultural belief systems? Because everybody's written on that already, and people know the various details and permutations of various belief systems, whether it be religious or cultural. And there's plenty of experts out on that. So I thought, let's talk about it from a deeper standpoint. So I came up with these 4 belief systems. The first one is the physical science belief about death, which was my dad's belief about death. He was a scientist, and it's the body dies, the mind dies. That's it. The mind is connected to the brain, the physical brain, and when the physical brain dies, i.e. the body dies, then the mind shuts off. That's the physical science belief about death. So that's the first belief system. And I make no judgments with anybody about any of these belief systems. I just make statements. This is a belief system that exists out there. Mm-hmm. And then the second belief system is what I call the fear of continued existence. So what that means is that the people believe that the mind will continue. And by the way, when I say mind, I don't just mean our focusing mind that, you know, thinks about this and that. I'm talking about our huge mind, or whatever you want to call that, intuition, you know, just the soul, the spirit, whatever. I just use the phrase mind because, as I said, I'm trying to take culture and religious stuff off.
Sure.
So
I agree. Like the origin of the thought, not the thinking, the thought. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So the second belief system is the mind continues after the physical body dies, but there's some fear associated with it. And the fear associated with that afterlife experience could be very different sources, very many sources and so forth, which I'm going to talk about actually in much greater detail in my second book. But on my first book, I want to stay focused on just helping people reduce and overcome their fear of death. So the second belief system, again, is fear of continued existence. The third belief system is belief that the mind will continue after the physical body dies, but there's no fear. And then the fourth belief system is the mind will continue after the physical body dies, but it can make choices, and it can choose even to come back in another physical body. So it's the idea of reincarnation or past lives or future lives, that idea. That's the fourth belief system. So everybody in the world falls somewhere in that spectrum of those 4 belief systems. And some people might be hybrids, or they may be not sure. So they may be, I call them fence sitters. I kind of, I lovingly call them fence sitters. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Okay, that's okay. And it's okay to be a fence sitter. You're not sure. Because I tell people, look, none of us are going to be absolutely sure what happens until actually that moment, which I call our most intimate moment of our lives, is that moment when our physical body dies. And one of two things is going to happen: either the light's going to stay on, or the light's going to go off. Either the mind is going to continue, or the mind is going to not continue. One of two things is going to happen. And so I say also, not only am I preparing people for living in the here and the now and the present and enjoying life now fully, regardless of what your belief system is, and living with your loving family and friends and so forth as much as humanly possible with them now, but also indirectly I'm preparing you for that moment. And if you continue, if the light stays on, so to speak, for then to be fear-free after you die.
Well, that's magnificent. Thank you for your non-judgment on all of that, because, we know, but we want to judge those other people that don't know either. It's really kind of funny. We have kind of an ownership of that. Kelvin, you have worked in 7 different countries. You have lectured in 30 out of the 50 states at the time of this interview here in the United States. Is this something that everyone has in common, no matter what their culture, no matter what their heritage? Is everybody a little freaked out about death and dying? I think the answer is yes, but I just want to hear it from you.
Yeah, I'll give you some coloration on it. But sure, the answer is absolutely yes, and to varying degrees and in various ways. And it's really interesting doing this work now, because I'm now, I've left the corporate legal stuff and I'm doing my nonprofit work full time for the last several years. And it's interesting because having worked now 25 people from over 25 countries now, every religion, doesn't matter, Christian, Muslim, Jews, Buddhists, Hindus, Sikhs, probably leaving some out. I mean, just every religion, including atheists and agnostics, everybody, if they're really candid, has some concern. It might not rise to the level of fear per se, but everybody is still wondering, because like I said, if we're really honest, nobody knows till we know. And we're going to know at that moment. And now, yes, some people may have had near-death experiences. Some people may have had very strong, very unmistakable, palpable spiritual experiences that seem to inform them and reduce and perhaps even eliminate their fear of death. So there are people like that on the planet, but I'd say 99% of the population is harboring some fear around death and dying, absolutely.
Yeah, so we're in pretty good company. Last night at my circle gathering, I knew that I'd be speaking with you today, and so I asked the group if they had any questions for you. And there was a question, and you just touched on it, and that is the near-death experience. And this is what was shared. Everyone that has had a near-death experience isn't so afraid when they come back here. It's those people who have not had a near-death experience that are still harboring that fear. So what can you do to help those people who have not had a near-death experience?
First of all, let me just make a clarification point. There are some people who've had near-death experiences who still are afraid of death and dying. It's the people who have had a very pleasant near-death experience who have zero or almost no fear of death and dying. And I know a number of people like that, and I include their stories in my book. And one person in particular, Jay, he died for 20 minutes, which is an incredibly long time to have no brain or breathing or no heartbeat, no brain activity and so forth for 20 minutes and then come back and have no side effects, no negative side effects. That story's in my book, and people can actually access that for free on my website if they want. They can get that off of my website for free. But here's the thing. Some people, if they have a high level of fear, they will take that with them. And that's why I say that's why I alluded to earlier how important it is to reduce our fears now, because those people who have a very high level of fear tend to not have a real pleasant near-death experience, and they come back and they still have their fears around death and dying. And so you take the fears with you, basically. And so my thinking is, well, let's get rid of them now, because not only is it going to help us now, but it's going to help us going forward. So to answer the second part of your question, to get rid of the fears, basically it's a two-pronged approach. One is, as you alluded to earlier in the introduction of me, it's the understanding is important, and getting clarity about what are our beliefs, what's my beliefs, what's the, I work with various clients, they call me, and by the way, I give a free phone session, free first session. So sometimes that takes care of it for people. So I do that as part of my nonprofit work. Just nice. a free initial phone session, and they can just go on my website literally and go to my calendar and make an appointment. People do that from around the world. So understanding is one prong of the approach, and sometimes clarity about the understanding, because some people will think they're afraid of this, and they think they're afraid of that, and they think they're afraid of this aspect of the death and dying process, and they're really not. They're afraid of something else, and I'll point that out in their conversation with me. And so we kind of identify and clarify things. That frees up a whole bunch of energy right there. Because if you think you're walking around with 6 different fears about death and dying, and you really only have 1 or 2, that narrows it down, number one, frees up some energy. Number 2, that gives us clarity in terms of what the potential solution to that can be. Because if we don't know what the fear is about, then we may not identify a proper solution. So the other prong of the approach, in addition to understanding, is a neurophysiologic approach. So I also, as you may have seen in my bio, I've been teaching meditation for over 40 years. Even during my corporate and legal careers, I would teach it on the side because people would hear that I've been meditating since I was a teenager, and I've been teaching it since I was, in my early 20s. And they say, "Oh, please teach me to meditate." And I'd be some legal conference, and they'd say, "Please teach me to meditate," so I'd be teaching, They're going, "Okay, but don't tell anybody because I got a day job. Don't tell anybody I'm teaching you. I have a day job." Anyway, so I would teach, like a few 3 courses a year just because of that, running into people over a wine bar at a reception or something. And anyway, so now I'm doing that full time again. I taught it full time in my 20s before I went to law school. And so that provides a neurophysiologic, back to your question, that provides a neurophysiologic solution. In other words, a brain and blood chemistry solution. Because when we turn on the fight or flight switch, which everybody knows what that is, we turn the fight or flight switch on too quickly and too frequently, which is what we do worldwide. That's why I'm dealing with people from people calling me from Lithuania, from the UK, from Australia, Singapore, India, Asia, all over the U.S., South Africa, Canada. Everybody is turning on their fight or flight switch way too much. And what that does is it floods the system with too much cortisol, adrenaline, lactic acid, and 30 or 40 other different chemicals and hormones. And it floods the system, overloads the system, then it sits stored in our brain and our muscle tissue. And so what happens is then you're walking down the street, somebody looks at you funny, or you're in a line at the bank that's too long that you got to get going to an appointment after, and you're in your fight or flight triggers, and then all that cortisol and all that lactic acid is just sitting in your muscle tissue, just floods your system again, and then you have a panic attack in an extreme case, or you just feel tense in a lesser state. But either way, it's not good. It's not healthy. And so what I teach is a simple technique that turns on the opposite of the fight or flight switch. In those people in your audience who have a healthcare background, it's the parasympathetic nervous system. So I call it the opposite of the fight or flight switch. Those people in the medical field understand it as the parasympathetic nervous system. So I help them turn on the parasympathetic, or the opposite of the fight or flight. And when they turn on the opposite of fight or flight, what happens is the brain and the blood chemistry balance out these imbalances that we've been storing up for decades. And that's a crucial component, because we can increase our understanding, but if we have a neurophysiologic system, our mind-body, in other words, our mind-body system is way out of balance chemically, we will keep going back to where we were. We won't move forward out of the fear.
I see. Oh, that is very eloquent. We're speaking today with Kelvin Chin. He's an author and a speaker. His website is overcomingthefearofdeath.org. he has a nonprofit, which is, he is actually the executive director and founder of Overcoming the Fear of Death Foundation. And I want to encourage all of us to get on top of fear itself. My website is fearorlove.com, okay? Now, I could have named it Turn Off Fight or Flight and Turn On the Parasympathetic Nervous System.com, but I didn't.
Exactly. A bit of a mouthful, yeah.
Yeah, totally. And so, Kelvin, the front of your book has a graphic.
Yes.
And I know that you chose that very intentionally. And it is a picture for me of a dandelion. And it's being, the little parts of the dandelion are being blown as they do. They're little parachute cells, and they're just going out into the wind. Would you like to elaborate on why you put that on the cover of your book?
Yes, it's a great question, and I think you may be the first person who's asked me this question. That's a great question, though. You're right. It was highly intentional picking this particular graphic for the cover of my book. I researched, I on the internet, I researched all various graphic artists who do the cover work and so forth, and I found this graphic artist in London, England, and he helped me. He created this, and I gave Simon the parameters or what I was looking for from an idea standpoint. Just explained to him that, look, Simon Avery is his name. If anybody's interested in contacting him, I give him a little shout out. But the thing is, I wanted something that was non-religious looking, but still captured potentially all four belief systems without stepping on anybody's toes by saying, look at this. This is yours. Look at this is yours. I wanted to leave it open and somewhat interpretive. And so that's why I picked this. And you're right, it is a dandelion, but some people look at it and don't even see the dandelion. Some people look at it and they see the intense part that Simon put, right where at the top of the shoot, top of the stem, and it's a very bright light,
yes.
Right? And I wanted that to appear that way, because very often people experience a brightness of light after they die, right? Or even in my dad's case, he was belief system number one, the physical science, no afterlife. He believed this was it. My dad used to say, stick me in a box, throw the dirt in me, I'm done. That was his famous quote. My dad would always say.
Yes.
Right? But so even my dad looking at this, if he was alive still, which he wasn't when I published the book, but he would look at it and he would probably focus on the fact that it's a dandelion. Oh, that's cool. It's a nice dandelion. And oh, that bright light. It's like, boom, I'm going to die. Boom. It's like a big event, even though he didn't believe that anything continued afterwards. So people can look at it in all different ways. And of course, other people who believe that we go on afterwards, you have the seeds of the dandelion in the graphic going off into the proverbial wind there. And maybe that, and people who believe in afterlife and reincarnation, that speaks to them,
Yes, let it be. Mm-hmm. Yes, very lovely. Yeah, I do like that burst of light there. Mm-hmm. So, Kelvin, I hope you don't mind if I probe you just a little bit more.
Go ahead.
Because this is kind of a thing in some of the communities that I'm involved with. There are people out there that are espousing, when you die, there is something that's like a false light that could possibly appear masquerading as the real, and don't go to that light. Don't do it. If you see people standing there that are your beloveds, they could be imposters. Just go on. Have you heard this line of conversation? It's kind of a thing right now.
Yeah, I've heard every line of conversation you can imagine. And my strong feelings about those kinds of thinkings is to not listen to them. Well, there's two things on this. I'll have two strong comments on this. One is to not not a promoter of fear, but I am a promoter of clear thinking. So what does that mean? Okay, let me break that down for you. So I would not promote this notion that you just described, because that promotes fear in people. People are immediately knee-jerk. People are fearful enough. There's so much fear already. You want to add to the fear? What does that? Even somebody who believes what you just said fervently and has a really good-hearted intention to help others by sharing that information with them, what's the end result? They've added to the fear of the person who they're talking to. They have not helped them, even though their intention is to help them. And I'm saying they may be genuine in their intention to help them. It has not helped them. It has burdened them more. It has not only created more fear about them in terms of afterlife, it has diminished their ability to live life right now with themselves and their loved ones on planet Earth, here and now. So they've done a disservice to the person on multiple levels. That's number one. Number two, I'm going to say two things on this number two. There's two subparts to the second part here, which is, one is, just because somebody, this is a part of this that I could articulate some agreement with what this person might be saying, or these people might be saying, is it just because somebody greets you on the other side or speaks to you from the other side, on this side, and somebody comes to you and channels to you some entity or angel or whoever comes to you and says XYZ, does not mean it's true, does not mean it's accurate. This is my point that I raised a few sentences ago of clear thinking. I'm a proponent of clear thinking. That means that we always need to use our common sense and our own clear thinking on this side and on the other side. I jokingly tell people, I said, just because somebody comes to us and says, oh, you really should meet this person and go on a blind date with them, it's going to be the love of your life for the rest of your life. On this side, I'm saying, on the physical side of things. Somebody says that to you. Why would you just blindly believe them without making the assessment yourself and just signing up, going on a blind date, and marrying the person? You wouldn't. That's a lot. It's like, it violates all common sense. I'm not saying some people haven't done this. There are some people who choose to violate complete common sense.
Welcome to the human race.
Exactly. I'm not saying there aren't some exceptions in the rule, but I'm just saying common sense should dictate there. Well, I'm saying no different if in these two subsequent situations where somebody comes to us from the other side and says, Leah, you really should meet this person because this person's going to change your life. Maybe, maybe not. So I listen to it. I listen to it, okay, but then Leah needs to make her own decision based on having met that person. Maybe the person is really going to be helpful, maybe not so much. Leah needs to use her own common sense. I say the same thing applies after we die, because these people who are saying this obviously are believe in the second or third belief system or fourth belief system. They believe in an afterlife of some sort. So, okay, that's fine. You believe that. That's great. You still use your common sense. You still use your clear thinking on the other side. So I agree with that part, that you don't just go because somebody says to go this way or that way. You make a decision based on what you feel at that time is appropriate. But back to my first thing that I said way at the beginning of our conversation today, I'm about reducing fear to prepare ourselves not only for living life here in the now, but at that moment we die, and if we continue afterwards, we're going to be fear-free. If we're fear-free after we die, we can make better decisions, because we can make the better decisions whenever we're fear-free, whether we have a body or don't have a body. And so that's why that kind of line of thinking I really shy away from. It's not helpful for the person. All it does is inculcate more fear, and that increases the likelihood that they're going to make a bad decision now and then, right?
Right. I really appreciate that. I feel very liberated by your description there and your explanation. Thank you for that.
Let me give you another example. It's just a funny story. So it's funny in an interesting way, educational though, I hope at least. So this I won't mention names. So he lives in San Francisco Bay Area, and he had a near-death experience. And his near-death experience was very, very, very clear. And it doesn't matter what the medical circumstances were, but he had a near-death experience as a medical situation, and he's on the other side now in this near-death experience, this NDE. And there are two entities there speaking to him, his guru and what he described as some light being, some angelic kind of light being. I don't think he called it an angel, but whatever. Somebody else who who seemed very loving. It was a very loving. It wasn't something nefarious. It wasn't something negative or anything. So there was sincerity on both parts of these two beings on the other side. Okay, there was genuineness from both sides. There wasn't anything nefarious going on here. His guru was saying, no, you should go back. You have other work to do, etc. You're not ready to come here yet. And then the other being is saying, no, come on over here. You're ready to come. You can come here and you'll be filled with light and love and so forth. And it was a very warm, it was very much like the NDE experiences you hear people talk about. They're filled with love and light and warmth and all of that. And so he was having that experience through that being. And then his guru is saying, no, you got to go back. You got work to do. So
goodness gracious.
So here's my thing. Here's my thing on this. I think it's a great example because what does it show? It shows several things. It shows that on the other side, there are various opinions. It's not like there's one absolute correct truth, capital T. There are different truths, small t, depending on who you're talking with. So in one of the beings, the truth was like, yeah, it's going to be lovely. It's going to be great. Come on over here. The other being is saying, no, you got work to do. You got to go back down there. And so he had the choice. He was the ultimate arbiter, though, the ultimate maker of choice, right? So he then chose to. Obviously, he came back because otherwise he wouldn't be having this conversation, right, with us. So he came back. He chose to come back. Now, could the guru have had a hidden agenda of him coming back and continuing to work on projects that he had not finished for the guru? Absolutely.
Sure.
Who knows? But he chose to come back, and it was his choice for whatever reason. And that's my whole message. If you want to look at one message underlying all the work I do, whether it's my meditation classes, my overcoming the fear of death, I do grief recovery work, or my work on helping people with afterlife understandings and reincarnation understandings and experiences, all of it distills down to one thing, which is we are each sovereign entities. Our minds, we are each free will thinking, choice-making, sovereign beings, and we need to embrace that and make those individual choices because we can. And how else are we going to learn if we don't make the choices and skin our knees a little here and there sometimes? It's not a bad thing,
Absolutely. Yeah. That is absolutely magnificent. Thank you for that story. I'm glad that you shared that. You did touch a little bit on the afterlife and reincarnation, and I see here in the notes that you have a video conference series on afterlife and reincarnation. How would somebody get hooked up and to enjoy that?
Yes, they can read more about it. And actually, there's a 5-minute video I talk about this on my website. They'll see it on the homepage, and there's also a separate page, but on the homepage they can click on the video right there on the homepage and watch it. And then there's also a separate page. It's just called Video Conference Series on the nav bar, the navigation bar, and they can sign up and register that way. I actually have another session it's actually tomorrow night. But every other week I'm having these, and then I'm going to start another series. It's a 6-part series, and I'll give you the titles just to kind of give you a sense of the breadth and depth of what I talk about in the series. I'm going to start another series in mid-September, and people can sign up now for that too. But and people can sign up, by the way, and just listen to that particular session if they want. If they're not interested in the other sessions, that's okay. A lot of people have signed up. Most people have signed up for the entire 6-part, but it's up to them. And so, like I said, the next one is going to be July 19th, which is tomorrow, which the title of that one is about reincarnation. So I'll just start at the first one. The first one in the series is what happens when we die. That's the title of the first one. Second session is, can we get glimpses of the other side? Near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, and other related experiences. And the third session is reincarnation in your future or your past? I talk about reincarnation. Yeah.
Cute.
Yeah, right. So the idea of reincarnation, coming back in other bodies and so forth, we talk about that and experiences, and I'm sharing some of my experiences, and some other people on the call will be sharing some of theirs. The fourth session is, why do people think there is a hell? So I'm talking about this idea of punishment. Is there a structural punishment? I mean, we know people can punish themselves, at any point, just feel badly about things and just punish themselves. But is there a structure called hell and a punishment system after we die? And so I'm going to talk about that. And I'm talk about the genesis. I was going to talk about where it came from. Where did this idea of hell come from? Because it way predates Christianity. Christianity, as you probably know, took it from other traditions and so forth, incorporated it. Then in the fifth session is, can our friends communicate from the other side? So when I say friends, I mean friends in the most generic way. Friends could be literally our friends or our loved ones who have died before us, but friends could be angels, it could be other entities and so forth. So I'm talking about communication from the other side in the fifth session. And the sixth session the last session is, what part of us continues after our body dies? Our mind, soul, is it something else? So what potentially continues? So that's the 6-part series. And I'm going to be doing this on a regular basis every 8 weeks or something like that.
That is fascinating. Each one of those is just packed.
Right.
That is absolutely beautiful. Now, you touched on the hell. Kelvin, what would you say to someone who has had a friend who committed suicide because they were just that miserable and did not choose to continue in body here in this life? I mean, it's a big old topic.
Yes.
Can of worms there.
Yep. So first of all, I take this whole sin and punishment thing off the table. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. Those are control mechanisms created by organizations and institutions to control people. And I don't want to take up too much time because that's a whole longer discussion. But let's talk about what happens to the people. And first of all, the people who've taken their life by suicide, who've died by suicide. And you've probably heard that, using the phrase committed suicide is inappropriate because that kind of, it's like committed murder. They didn't commit murder of themselves. They chose to die by suicide, and they were in pain, obviously, and maybe on a lot of levels, and they made that choice. And there's no eternal damnation. There's none of that. And in fact, if one believes in a loving God or universe or mother or whatever culture you're coming from, and you believe in that, then what kind of love would that be to punish somebody who is in that much pain? So that's the thing, the way to look at these kinds of things. And it's absolutely nonsensical to think that there would be anything other than love and understanding of somebody like that on the other side, somebody who's died by suicide, because that's what love and understanding means. And if there is a God, or whether there's God or not, if there are entities who are more powerful, wise, intelligent, fill in an adjective, than we are, whether it's God or not, doesn't matter, then if they are, in fact, more intelligent, wise, loving, compassionate than most human beings are, they would absolutely understand fully that person who died by suicide needs to be embraced, needs to be fully loved and appreciated, because that's at least a significant part of why the pain was, where the pain came from in the first place. And so that that's the way I think these things need to be looked at, not so black and white, and certainly any negative feelings towards that person need to be completely taken off the table. And
the judgment. Mm-hmm.
The judge, all of that. It's just absolutely, opposite of what Jesus, Jehovah, Allah, Buddha, Shankara from the Vedic tradition, Vyasa from the Vedic tradition. Doesn't matter which of these spiritual leaders you talk about, who some people view as gods or God, it doesn't matter. They all would embrace that person, 100%, person who's died by suicide.
Sure. And so, Kelvin, have you worked with people that are just flat out angry, in your grief recovery work? I mean, you're grieving because their loved one took their own life.
Absolutely.
Ended their life, however you like to say it.
Yeah, died by suicide. Yeah. So yes, they absolutely. I've worked with people like that, and the anger and the frustration.
Yeah.
And it's because what's grief? Grief is not. So first of all, a lot of, quite frankly, professional schools, psychiatric school, medical schools, psychiatry and psychotherapy programs still don't teach or define grief properly. They still equate grief with sadness, and I think most lay people do for sure. And it's not about grieving. Is not being sad. Grieving is the feelings, is the conflicting feelings that come about when there's a change in a pattern of behavior or the loss of life of somebody. But it could just be a change in the pattern of behavior. It could be moving across country can cause grief. Losing your job can cause tremendous grief. There's a huge change in the financial and huge change in the regularity of the income. All of that. Those are grieving moments, and have nothing to do with death, and could create anger and all kinds of other emotions. Sadness. Sadness is a very real emotion, of course, and it can come along with grieving, but it is not the same as grieving. Example, my mom, who I told you about already, I still, when I'm giving public lectures and sometimes in doing interviews, I will choke up when I'm talking about my mom. And
amazing.
And it's still, it's sad. I'm sad. It's sadness, but I'm not grieving. I don't have conflicting feelings about her death like I did when she first died. Because I had these conflicting feelings like, oh, should I be studying? I'm here with my mom at the hospital, but and then I'm carrying around my law books, and I'm not studying because I can't study because I'm just mentally absorbed in the fact that my mom is going to die. That was before she died. Then she dies, and then I'm feeling guilty. I'm having conflicting feelings, feeling guilty about not having spent more time with her, and blah, 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 all of that. So that's what grieving is. I'm past the grieving. I still feel sad about my mom's death, and she never saw my kids, never met my kids. She hasn't been with me for the last 35 years, right?
Yeah. Kelvin, thank you for opening that up. I don't think I have ever heard anyone disassociate or just make a delineation between the sadness and what grief is.
Right.
That's very liberating. And
Yeah.
like you say, this is what you do. You go in and you clarify for people so they have some proper footing, so they can have the conversation within themselves that doesn't drive them insane, that brings sanity and well-being into their life. Well done. Thank you for that. Another question from my particular circle group has to do with out-of-body experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that it's appropriate to overcome the fear of death by having what is a so-called out-of-body experience? Would that help without actually having to die to have the near-death experience? Is there any similarity there?
Yes, absolutely. The short answer is absolutely yes, and I talked about it at some length in the last session actually that I did a couple weeks ago in my video conference series. But the short answer is yes, absolutely yes. out-of-body experience. Why is that helpful? Because what if in fact we believe that the mind or soul or spirit or whatever we want to call it, consciousness, awareness, continues after the physical body dies? What does that mean? That means that we are acknowledging inherently that the mind and the body are distinct. They're separate from each other. You know? And so if you have an out-of-body experience, that is further direct experience that the mind and the body are separate from each other. Okay? So that's number one. Number two, if the mind is going to continue after the body dies, what mind is that? I say it's the same mind that's Kelvin Chin right now. It's the same mind that's Leah LaChapelle. It's the same mind. It's not this all of a sudden we become a different mind or something as soon as our physical body dies. No. We may feel more relaxed. We may have a more expanded experience and sense of self because the physical body is no longer restricting us and so forth and so on. But the more out-of-body experiences, the more experiences analogously, you could say, through meditation, like what I teach, that increases the comfort zone because we're having more and more experience that the mind and the body are not the same thing. And if you do that on a daily basis by meditating, whether it's my technique or whatever technique, then, I mean, the unique thing about my technique, just in a nutshell, is that it's very easy and effortless, does not involve focusing of the mind, and it does not involve clearing or pushing thoughts out of the mind. That's my technique in a nutshell, and people can go on my websites and check it out more and watch my videos and audio tapes. But the thing is, whatever you're doing in terms of meditation, if you're turning within, which is what I call my meditation technique, turning within meditation. But if you're turning within through any meditation technique, you're turning within on a regular basis, you are regularly exposing your nervous system to the fact, and your mind to the fact, that it's not the body. It's not the same as the body. It's not the same as the body. You're reminding it every time. I'm not saying you're thinking that. That's not your meditation. But experientially, you're reminding yourself. And so, yes, that can reduce your fear of death because that's analogous to an out-of-body experience, right? So I had an out-of-body experience once.
Really?
How much more time do we have?
I am not sure how much more time we have, but I want to hear this, so go ahead.
Okay. I'll give you the shorter version of it. I woke up in the middle of the night, and my ex-wife was sleeping next to me in bed, and I didn't want to wake her up. And so I just started to stir to get up and get some water. I was thirsty. But just even in that, I woke her up. So then, okay, she's awake, and she said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Get me some water too." I said, "Fine." So it's pitch black. It's 3 a.m, pitch black in the house. Not a light on in the house. No night lights, no nothing. And then, so I did this thing where I kicked my body down to the end of the bed, and the springs in the bed, I bounced my butt on the end of the bed, and I stood right up. All right? Not a lot of blood in my head. Okay, that's the takeaway right now. So I got up really fast. Now I'm starting to walk down the hallway. I think I'm still walking down the hallway because I know the house. I've lived in it for 7 years. I know the house. I'm walking down to get water. Next thing I experience is my head hurts. The top of my head hurts a lot. And I realize, I open my eyes. Then I realized my eyes were not open. I thought they were open the whole time. I thought I was walking down the hallway. I had passed out because I had gotten out of bed too quickly, stood up too quickly, suddenly, no blood in my brain. I passed out, and I was crumpled up outside the bedroom door on the floor, and I had banged my head against the wall really hard. Completely unaware until I felt pain. The point is, I'm not suggesting that people experiment and try doing this. But the point is, from your question, from an OBE, out-of-body experience, from a spiritual standpoint, it was like a watershed moment for me because my mind was wide awake the entire time. I thought I was still walking down the hallway till my head hurt.
Incredible.
And so that, to me, is exactly what happens when we die. The body shuts off, which is what my body did. It completely shut off for a split second, and yet my mind continued.
Incredible. Yeah, I love it. We've only got like 1 more minute, Kelvin, but I know that you travel all over, and thank you for your service. But this is such an important topic. You speak with a good many healthcare professionals.
Yes.
What do the healthcare professionals want to know from you? How do you actually help them? Can you sum it up pretty quickly?
Pretty quickly, yeah. I think the biggest help that I have been to healthcare providers when I've done some continuing education, in-service trainings for healthcare providers and so forth. So people should contact me if they have any interest in that, and I can come in and do a 1 or 2 hour. I can tailor it to whatever they need time-wise. But is the biggest, I think, help I can be for them is to give them some tools and talking points to talk with people about death and dying from these different belief systems that I talk about, so that they're not stepping on the Buddhist toes, they're not stepping on the fundamentalist Christian toes, and they're not stepping on the atheist toes, depending who they're talking with, the Muslim toes, whoever they're talking with. Because what happens is, if we're familiar with our belief system, and then we start talking to somebody we're not familiar with, we feel uncomfortable. They feel that discomfort. That affects the healthcare delivery, and that also affects the delivery from the reverse way in terms of the patient and or family communicating openly with us. They don't feel that we're open to them, and then they don't communicate openly with us as a healthcare provider. Healthcare delivery suffers. So I help them to talk and understand about these things, and can talk in a way. They don't have to understand everything about Buddhism, but they have to understand enough about the fourth belief system that I talk about, so that they can talk about these things in a way that the Buddhist will go, oh, okay, they accept my belief, even though they're a Christian, right?
And there's trust that is established.
Exactly.
It's a nice bridge. Beautiful, Kelvin. We have been talking today about death and overcoming the fear of it with Kelvin Chin. He is the author of the book, Overcoming the Fear of Death, through each of the 4 main belief systems. I suggest that you check out his work. The website is overcomingthefearofdeath.org. He has a foundation. He gives free stuff. He is easy to find, easy to work with, a complete joy. What else can I say? I just want to close with this pretty cool quote. It's from a gentleman from history, and his name is Jean de la Bruyere, and he says, the fear of death is worse than the death itself. So thank you so much, Kelvin Chin, for being with us on Unzipping Reality. We're going to keep unzipping reality, and we're just going to keep doing it right until we die and beyond. How about that?
Thank you so much, Leah. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. All right, everybody. That's it for Unzipping Reality. I'm Leah LaChapelle. My website is fearorlove.com. Oneness happens. It's the great letting go and letting in with allowance and balance. So trust the process, know the process, be the process, and do the process as we unzip reality. Bye-bye, everyone.